Welcome back to Vintage Computer Features. I'm sure I'm going to get a comment about those. The more you ask, the longer it takes. That's how we're going to do this. Okay, well maybe not. But this is not a classic Mac. This is an interesting little PC from a manufacturer you may not have known actually made PCs. A little Taiwanese manufacturer. Turn on the video light here. It's a pretty nondescript system. You can see there's an Opti chip right there that's part of the chipset. It even says chipset right on it. 25 megahertz part. There's a UMC chip there. I don't know what that does. There I think is the BIOS ROM, at least what I assume is the BIOS ROM, with a sticker covering up the hole where you'd flash it with light. So it's a good thing that's not missing. There's another part of the chipset there. Chipset 2, that looks like that's labeled. No, it's not. Chips and Technologies, chip over there. There's no onboard memory on this. What looks like memory up there is actually just cache memory. There is the CPU, 25 megahertz, 386DX. So this is a 32-bit system through and through. There's a 25 megahertz 387 installed in that socket right there. And you can see the system gives you, looks like 2 8-bit and 4 16-bit ISA slots, and then there's this weird slot in the middle, which is completely proprietary, and this is actually a source of trouble for this machine, because this is the RAM card. This is where all the memory on the system is. There are a total of 8 SIM sockets per side, for 16 SIMs total, maximum. That's obviously not what's installed. There's a bunch of supporting logic there. That might actually be base memory. That's on the board there. And then these are just expansion chips. There are a total... actually, there's 2 banks. They're both labeled Bank 0 for some reason. I don't know why. That's not correct. But they're in sets of 4. You can see they're all identical. I don't know if they all have to be identical. I'll have to dig through my collection of 30-pin SIMs to see if I can upgrade this, but it's got a total of 1.2 megabytes of memory installed in it right now on this board. But the problem is with these contacts, because this card is so tall, it nudges up against the top of the case, and those contacts tend to not make good contact. And so then the system will complain it's got no memory, because it doesn't, because all the RAM is on this board. So, kind of a pain in the butt design. But it's another one of those quirky 386 boards. Unlike a lot of 386 boards, this one is completely integrated. It's got a floppy controller and a hard drive controller, IDE, built right onto it. Which, speaking of, here's a hard drive. I have never seen one of these before. This is a Western Digital Tidbit 60 megabyte drive. It's actually a 2.5-inch drive built on, well, with a adapter installed. I believe that's a factory adapter to convert it to 3.5-inch. It's only got 1 screw, which is kind of odd. Probably have to add screws to that, but anyway. This hard drive bracket looks like an afterthought, and it probably was on the case design. I have no idea what power this power supply is, although it might be 120 watts. It's got a jumper map right on the front, which is very handy. Color monochrome for the display, etc., etc. WTL 3167 or 3187. That would have been for a Waytech Math coprocessor, if you happen to install one, which I think would have used those extra pins, which is why you can see there's an extra row of pins on that 387 socket. If you go ahead and take a look at the back, I still haven't told you who manufactured this machine, and we'll find out now. Pretty standard there. It was actually built by Tatung. I believe that is the same Tatung. I'd have to look up the address. It could not be. You never know. But the same Tatung that manufactured cheap, what they used to call drugstore fans. But this is a model TCS-8800T. And it is factory set at 115 volts. Other than the brand name, it is just another generic Taiwanese PC clone from the, what I presume is the late 80s, early 90s. Somewhere in there. I think the BIOS copyright is 1991, so if that gives you any indication. Parallel port is there, and there's two serial ports. Curiously, they're both 9-pin serial. There's no 25-pin on this. There's your expansion slots. I'm going to go ahead and scrounge up some covers and cover up those empty slots because I don't really plan on installing anything in this. Maybe a sound card. In fact, there's a sound card that's sitting down there right now. I might just go ahead and install it because there's certainly room. Coming around here, you'll notice that the 8-bit slot is uncovered right here. And you're probably wondering why that is. In a lot of cases, that would be because this would have had an 8-bit video card, but in this case, the system was actually used to drive a film stress machine at work with respect to fabrication. And the reason why it was pulled is because this was unreliable. And also, the power supply fan, or what I thought was the power supply fan, I think it might actually be the bearings in the hard drive, were starting to go bad. So this was pulled. I was under the impression that it was a 40 megahertz 386 because I didn't pay too careful attention to it and replaced it with a 33 megahertz 486 and it ran a little bit too fast, we'll put it that way, because that was one of those pieces that was tied to the clock speed as opposed to some later things. I know that there's some other equipment in there that worked just fine under Pentium, but I tried replacing it. If you remember that HP Vectra, I tried replacing it with that, and that didn't work at all because it was just way too fast. So, anyway, there's your keyboard connector. Right there. There's your video selector. It's in color mode, obviously, because it's got a VGA card in it. This is actually another one of those Western Digital cards. If you take a look there. WD90C00. I've got a lot of those. Western Digital later spun off their video chipset and manufacturing to a company called Paradise. Or into a company called Paradise. Looks like there's a giant jumper shunt that's soldered in place over top of that crystal, although the crystal's connected to the board, so kind of an interesting way to do that. I don't know if that's like a ground or something, or what that would be, but anyway, this is all cabled up. It should be ready to go. All I have to do is just hit this giant switch at the front. You can see here that, yes, we definitely have a problem. It's not very appreciative of the keyboard. I wonder if it just doesn't like it, or because it seems to be always cold booting it like that. The keyboard doesn't work. Yeah, now it's deciding it doesn't want it. Okay, I have figured out the problem. Look at that. Yikes. So, I think I'm going to have to source a keyboard socket from something in order to get this to work. It's funny, it actually does function enough to turn those on, but not enough to make the keyboard work. And you can see this is what it does. It tries to post. And then it goes into a burn-in test mode. And then the keyboard stops responding completely. I don't know why the video is flashing like that. There must be something wrong with this monitor. That's probably why there's all of that going on. Well, that was a fail. Went from kind of working, I could get some lights on the keyboard, to completely not working at all. So, I guess I'm going to be replacing that keyboard connector, which is going to be great, because it means I'm going to have to wire up an AT keyboard connector. I'm sure if I go and look on eBay, I can probably find some that are pre-made, which would definitely be better than having to wire one up. I'm also assuming, of course, that there's nothing wrong with the connection on the motherboard, which is a little bit messed up. I might have to pull the board and take a look at that and make sure the solder joints are good. So, also hope that it didn't blow up anything running it loose in the case like that. Whatever. It's another computer video that ends in a fail. It seems to happen 9 times out of 10. Anyway, I also just noticed this. There's a carrier right there on the front of the case that the hard drive could go in. But the other thing is this right here, this cage assembly at the back is riveted into the case. So you can't get rid of that. So that's kind of interesting. Now I also know that some of these cases, and it looks like this might be one of them, although I've got the cover and there's no knockout on the cover, this piece right here, there would be a floppy drive that you could mount sideways. That was often something that was done on these. And maybe this is true on this one too, because it looks like there might be, yeah, there is. There is actually a blanking plate right there, so you could mount the floppy drive sideways. Not that I'm going to, because it's already got this floppy drive, and I don't have the slot cover for that. I'm not going to put a CD-ROM in a 386, that's just a little weird. I had a creative drive around here somewhere that I should probably put into something. I don't know where that went. Probably in a box of parts and put it away because I didn't think I was going to ever use it. Which might be somewhat true. But either way, got some work to do on this Tatung TCS-8800T. Yeah, here's the case. You can see the key lock. This button gets stuck. That one just kind of pushes out. That's for the turbo. You can see the turbo LED. The window over the disk activity light is missing. I can't believe I never noticed that this had a 3.5-inch bay before. But, yeah, so I guess that's where a floppy would go. But that doesn't really explain this front piece. Would you be able to remove that? I can't really tell. I don't know if it screws on or if it's like a one-time use. It's probably like a one-time use kind of deal. But, well, thinking about it that way as well, how would this come out? Oh, I guess it's got screws on it's got these 2 screws as well. So these 2 screws here are the ones that actually hold the bay in place. This holds this cover, which I think is attached. I'm not 100% sure. We can find out. But I don't think I'm going to do that right now. I think we can find out later. I'm kind of intrigued. The power LED is an orange LED, while the turbo is a green one. It's almost like they put those in the wrong place. Because I would think the green LED would be the power. But, that's okay. No, that's definitely how it was done from the factory. Maybe it was built at 4:30 on a Friday. And that would certainly explain some of the interesting quirks that it's got. But, There you go. There's your Tatung TCS-8800T. Some assembly required. There will eventually be a video of this thing repaired, if I have anything to say about it. But it'll probably be a while, because I've got about 800,000 projects that I need to get to, including those. Yes, I haven't forgotten about those. But even those are pretty far down the line, because I've got a bunch of other crap that's in here that I got to deal with. So we'll see what comes next.